Dani.
Hello, Professor O'Kane.
It's great to have you here. Fusion maestro, YouTube educator, and all around great guitar player. Thank you so much for coming to Streetwise Guitar. We really appreciate it. We meaning me and everybody else watching.
I appreciate the invitation. It's very nice of you to have me.
So you're a music school guy. I'm a music school guy. I was a music school employee for a long time, professor, not janitor. And although some might want to argue that, why music school?
I mean, I feel like that's a great question. I at this point, I honestly don't know why. I guess you would have to tell me why you would think it's a good idea to go, because I have a lot of reasons not to go.
You know what? Hit me.
For the most part, I think, well, it's a grift. I think it was designed to be a grift for a very long time, probably since, I would guess, the 80s, maybe the 90s. But it was supposed to be a different kind of grift that it ended up being. You see, I think that the original plan, the scam, was to take people like my parents who were middle class and had some money, and the idea was that we are going to, sell a dream and take their money. And that grift is sort of evil enough, but it's just a normal grift. But the grift evolved, and I think it spiraled into something it was never supposed to be, which is instead of robbing people with money, they realize they can rob people without money. So when I went to Berklee, there were people like me whose parents were paying for the experience. I'm not talking about like the full scholarship people. They're few and far between, and they're a part of the marketing team. You know what I mean? They're just like the student body of the marketing team. But people.
I see you've put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah. I understand. I understand the system. So people like me were the original designated victims. It was supposed to wipe out, this long-term savings account that parents set aside for their kids' education. And that's an evil enough thing to do, but it's, at the end of the day, it's sort of harmless because the parents were saving up to it, and the kids, that most of them should have been, accountants or working some normal jobs, decided to go and spend $150,000 to $200,000 of their parents' money before they realized that it's not for them. But something happened along the way where they realized that they can sell this dream to people who don't have any money, and then that the government is going to sign off on loans for these people that are non-forgivable. And I think the grift went from being something designed to empty parents' existing money to creating a generation of serfs. And that is what you see now. And that, I think, is indefensible. I think people should go to prison. Not jail, prison. I think a lot of people who are complicit in this on the administration level, even some of the professor, I think that fines and some sort of truth and reconciliation committees should be on the table, but actual prison time for people should be on the table too, because it's exploiting. It's just something that never should have been legal. It never should have been allowed. Like if I don't know, if I were to tell you, hey man, I have no money whatsoever, and you tell me, oh, do you want to live in a mansion? And I'd go, but I have no money. And be like, sure, yeah, do you want to live in a mansion? And it's just like, yeah, I guess. Like, okay, so you'll pay it off. Right? It's like, and you're like 17, you're like, I have a mansion now. But then you can't afford anything in it, and it's like it keeps appreciating, and you pay more and more property tax, and you don't actually own it. You just like are in this loan you can never pay. I mean, I can give you so many examples of people that I went to school with whose lives are just ruined. I mean, like, you know, they're just going to be paying this forever, and they've never worked at music. They graduated from school and they went straight into the service industry, like, you know, wiping off tables and living that kind of life. I mean, my girlfriend that graduated with me, like, now I'm married, I'm not with that, the lady who was my girlfriend in college was just, she had no business being in that school. I mean, it was madness that there was no standards to accept her. It was just the money, and she had no money. She was like from, like, you know, a real hillbilly family from, like, rural Pennsylvania, and you know, the dad, the stay-at-home mom and park ranger dad, government loan, including, like, because I lived with her, so I knew the financial situation. Like, she had loans for her food, for her booze, for her rent. So it wasn't just the $200K back in 2000, like, you know, 3 to 7 when I went to school for tuition, which now I'm assuming is way, way more than that. It was another $150,000 for just living life for 4 years. And they were like, oh, take the money, party on, just like checks in the mail. And she's paying interest. I mean, I don't know what she's doing now, but she went in as a piano major. She liked Tori Amos. I don't know if you know who that is. I didn't.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. So it's like just like chick music, you know, like piano ballads with like nothing in them. And she could play like 3 or 4 of her songs and 4 Elise. That was her repertoire. I was just like, she couldn't read, couldn't write, didn't know anything. And she went into the piano program, and her teacher, private teacher, was just kind of like trying to make her feel kind of good, but she was still panicked every time she had a lesson because she didn't know anything, and he was trying to show her like enclosures or some shit, you know, just something that's like way beyond her scope. And after one semester, you know what she did? She changed her major, her principal instrument, to hand percussion. And she was, because she liked going to hippie festivals and drop acid and play djembes. And she went down to the basement of the Uchida building in Boylston and just jammed with these like Afro-Cuban dudes and smoked pot for 4 years. And she could barely, like, she knew nothing about this stuff. You know what I mean? And it was amazing. But like, the amazing thing is that she wasn't a unique case, but she graduated like with not a low, like, you know, GPA. They just shuffled her through the whole experience. She went immediately to work at a restaurant. She never played gigs. You know what I mean? It's like, and she's still paying this off. I mean, when she graduated, I think her debt was like, you know, something like $350,000 before all of the interest and everything was deferred. So, I mean, okay, like, in what world does this make sense? Like, in what world does the grift make sense?
So is your indictment of the Boston Berklee Music School machine,
Mm-hmm.
or is it all music schools?
You know, my experience, my you know, as the libs say, my lived experience, you know, with the whole machine was through Berklee. So that's what I know kind of personally, and my classmates went there. I assume that most machines work in a very, very similar way, maybe with the exception of community colleges. But you know, we can certainly talk about some different models. But I would say that any school that markets and pushes people and accepts people with no standards and will take people with no money, that people that are taking gigantic loans that for some reason their parents are just dumb enough to sign to, or even worse, where they don't need their parents, they don't need co-signers. I'm assuming some of that exists too. are in on, let's say, the worst, of the violations, like, the worst category crime in this. Now, it's bad enough to, like, take parents' money and providing no monetization, no, how do you call it, like skills that you can turn into money. There's a term for that. So, like, I don't know, I remember getting out of school, like, when I was in my early 20s, I'm like almost 40 now, and I do well now, but, back then, I just remember realizing that if I play $100 gig every single day of the year, then I'll be making, $36,000 a year. And I was, which is like shit money. And I was like, not even close to getting $100 gig a day.
Right.
On the road, we would, like, I was touring over 250 days a year for over a decade, playing shows. And for extra money during the days, we would do master classes in colleges. So I got to see, not from within the college, but, talking to the students, playing with the students, just, we would do, for a few years, I would say, 2 to 3 colleges a week, just being, in their jazz programs, way before we started trashing jazz programs, so that's why I guess we were invited at that time. But, I did not see this very high level. We didn't go to the Miami University, but we went to the one in Tampa, forget what it's called.
That wouldn't be part of us.
Yeah, and then we went to DADE, D-A-D-E.
Oh yeah. That's the community college.
Community college. Yeah, we did one there in Florida, and we did a bunch of other ones. We did one all over the country. I did not have the experience of, I would say, anywhere we went, of seeing exceptionally high level of faculty or students. That was not my experience.
I was lucky then.
Yeah.
I must have been very, very lucky. I mean, I know that UNT, North Texas State, our bands used to battle, the top bands used to battle each other, with a downbeat awards and that kind of thing. I know some of the schools up in Boston, the New School, also USC. There was another one in California.
Sure, but when you take a look at
but there was, I was just going to say that there was very few. I was just going to say that there's so few schools as opposed to the many schools that you went to. I guess I always thought that all the schools were like mine. But I'd heard about Boston and about Boston Berklee. For those of you that wondering why I keep saying Boston Berklee, is because I keep thinking that there's also a Berklee in California. Yeah, which is a totally different kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that's where you go to, learn important majors like the history of vending machines and women's rights for pygmies and that's a different kind of Berklee. They're into the humanities. But it's when you take a look at, let's say, battles of bands or the big bands of schools, you're talking about a row of musicians that all has full rides. It's kind of like trying to make judgments about whether the lottery is a great great benefit to society if you're just comparing the winners. But there are so few winners and so many losers. So
right. That's the showpiece of the school.
Exactly.
Obviously.
So what about like the other? What about the bottom 98% of students? What's going on there?
They're the bottom.
Yes, and I would say that like the level Like people kind of schools, in my experience, being in them and teaching programs, have sort of 1 to 2 guys on each instrument. That would have been fine. That was great, not great, but like great for a kid before attending school. And they really want them because that's the impression that they care to cultivate. But those, we've seen prodigies. It's like, it's nothing new. They have them every generation. Now they seem, because of YouTube, to have more than ever. They understand jazz on this pretty intuitive level from listening to records since they're 10 and having like some chops and some command and some aesthetic, and some people develop their sound early. And they tend to just get those guys in a room and just be a marketing piece for the school. And that's the trade-off, right? It's like they go there for free. They have the college experience for free. They get to network and basically have fun. They live like, the basketball team.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. And then the other guys pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. The other guys pay for that, and the entire administration staff, yeah.
There were also people in music school that I remember that were actually ostracized because they couldn't stay in the jazz program, and they actually went on to become very, very well known, like writers and famous. So there was so many people that went to my school that went on to do amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also people who went on and went to law school right after.
Sure.
They went from music school straight to law school, and you never really heard from them again.
Yeah.
But having said all of this stuff, the grifting and the supporting of the 2%, etc., what positive thing did music school do for you?
Positive things. Some things are hard to quantify because, I don't want to pretend like I learned nothing. But I was always serious about learning music and practicing since I started. So when you take the time period of 18 to 22 years old in a serious practicer's life, how much of that can you attribute to the wonders of music school? Like, if you are working your ass off, like I often felt distracted by what I considered to be completely non-related topics to what interested me and what I ended up doing with music. Like, I'm sure everybody who brings up the topic, like, and for the right reason, brings up conducting, history of music,
Yes.
Shit like that. It's under the guise of giving you a full education. But what really was happening, I felt, was the school was in a tricky place, because we had harmony 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the idea was like, it was somehow way too much time for the topic and not enough time at the same time. Like, the resolution of teaching was all fucked up, because somehow, I don't understand how, but we spent like 6 months on secondary dominance. You know what I mean? Like 5 chords. It's like I don't understand how they stretched it out to be that. Not to say that secondary dominants aren't important. They're in like every standard. But you are talking about 5 of 2, 5 of 3, 5 of 4, 5 of 5, 5 of 6. You are talking about 5 fucking chords. It's like, how can you have that be a weekly topic if you're a serious person? They were just like...
I think Scott Henderson mentioned something like that in my interview, in my original music school thing, which I will link up here somewhere, and you can check out what he said about going to those kind of classes.
Yeah, it was just like so fucking dumb. It was just, once you understood, like, for me, it's like, maybe, I didn't have a great grasp of it, but like once I started practicing it, I was just like, oh, okay. Like, so it's like the dominant just leads you to these other chords in the key. Cool. And then they just started like, here it is in F sharp. Here it is in, B flat. Here it's just like, okay, like, cool. And then just like every week it would just be like, And again, it wasn't like they were showing you hip ways to like actually put it on the instrument, because nobody could hang with that, and it was not taught in like on guitar. It was taught to everybody, so they had to find this weird. I kept feeling that, like, I kept having this feeling that even with very relevant subjects for every musician, like harmony, it had to be delivered in a fucked up wrong way that was useless, right? Like ear training is a great example. If you actually take a classroom of guitar players and you make them sing blues scales and find them on the guitar on one string over moving harmony, you're going to have a lot of people who have a lot of aha moments and get a lot better. But if you just teach everybody solfege, you know what I mean? It's just like nobody knows why the fuck they're there. Yeah, it's just, that's what they're teaching though, because the material itself is just, here's the thing. I would say that, first of all, learning music at an institution that is trying to be non-stylistic in the way that it's teaching it is impossible. That's the first fucked up thing about music school as opposed to jazz school.
So I would say that trying to start a school that is stylistically broad and then get people who are interested in different styles of music that play different instruments too into the same room and expect real education to happen is a bogus kind of idea. And I would say it because the way I think about learning any sort of music is task dependent, not data dependent. Meaning that I think most people watching now, I would assume, consume music instruction via YouTube. And anybody who's spent some serious hours doing that knows that there's a big difference between collecting data and getting better at music.
Right, because everybody's busy collecting, data, right? They're just watching and watching and watching and instructional after instructional, and they never get better.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of them get somewhat better at something, but I think the more interesting question is like, how come we don't get better from that, right? So if I were, let's say, an AI...
I have the answer.
What is it?
I have the answer. Back in the days when they had CD stores or record stores, you would be shedding and then you'd think, God, I'm so fucking sick of shedding. I know, I'll go to the record store. And then you spend a couple of hours there and you're like, I'm getting better because I'm, like you fool yourself into thinking like, I'm buying all these records. This is going to make me better. And you spend a few hours doing that and you don't shed. And it's the same thing with tutorials. It's the same exact thing. You get one tutorial, you're like, yeah, no, I'm going to get better. And then, oh, well, I just saw that Henderson put out something new. I haven't seen him in a while. I'm going to buy that one. Oh, let me check out Beato here. Let me do. Before you know it, you're not practicing. You're just watching.
I would say that distraction, which is what you're describing, like the bouncing back and forth and like being tempted between different types of kind of like sensory data input is a compartment in that. But I think it's a bigger problem. I think what's happening in reality is that the way we are not AI computers, right? Like an AI computer can drink data and then it has the processing power to filter through the data. It has basically an indexing mechanism that's built in. That's exactly what we don't have. So in getting better is coming up. I like the metaphor of the library. If I give you 50 books and I say organize them, you could just throw them on a shelf and you'll find any of the 50 within like the first 2 minutes of looking. But if I give you 2 million books and I say, hey, can you organize these books? You're gonna first of all be like, what the fuck? And then you're gonna think, like any reasonable person, it's like, based on what? Like there are infinite ways to organize anything, right? So it could be height, thickness, name of author, last name of author, style, era. So let's say you spend the next 15 years organizing 1 million books by the first name of the author. And then you find out that all the people that come to your library need books from like 1902, 1903. It's like you're so fucked, right? It's like your entire system of organizing has nothing to do with the task at hand. This is exactly what the difference between a classical musician and a jazz musician is, right? It's not that a classical musician doesn't understand what G Phrygian is or doesn't know an E minor arpeggio. He just needs to know different things about it. He has a different compartments designed to put that information to where they can draw the things they need in real time. Now, the fact that, I don't know, you can play G harmonic minor on a D7 does not matter to a guy who plays in the CSO. It's like it's not a useful bit of information. So I think the big thing about data is not so much having a lot of it, but having a system that's relevant to the way you need to extract it in real time. And I think that's what practicing at a high level is. It's about, I don't know, I know that you're into like Messiaen mode, so you need to have this gateway into how to apply them over 2-5-1s, right? It's about direct application. Just seeing the picture of something on a fretboard is not the key to the kingdom. The key to the kingdom is creating a system of starting points, ending points, entries, connections to other chords, like the geometry of how you see your playing and how external, new ideas interface with things that your body is already doing. It's creating this neuron network for an improviser that is completely usable over moving harmony, over a variety of grooves. So I think people, when they are forced in a room to learn solfege and conducting, are basically going in insane distance away from all the information that is somehow relevant. And for me, in my schooling experience, I just felt like constant distraction, constant like homework that was kind of, very indirectly related to.
So why did you finish school?
Because I just go with whatever. I'm like a status quo kind of person, and I was very lucky to start touring, and then I just kept that going forever. And I wasn't good at guitar when I finished school. I really wasn't. I started making albums, and then I just started playing. Like, we played long shows. We would play I would say 3 to 5 hours every night, playing like bar gigs, and we would just play forever. Nothing but original music. We would write. I was in a band with my friends, which also there's so many things you can do after school that just absolutely blow. You know what I mean? Like, move to New York to a shitty apartment and go to jam sessions and just get humiliated night after night and interact with assholes, and just get.
Oh, that's just great. What are you talking about?
Yeah, be a part, go broker and it's fucking carry your gear on the subway and all that shit. It's my advice to people who want to, start a band with your friends.
Did you meet those friends at school?
No.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say, I thought there was going to be some silver lining.
No, there's no silver lining. Just,
there's just lining.
Silver lining. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I think it's about, a part of it is luck. A part of it is trying to make music with people for real, not in a way that is posturing or flexing. If you find somebody you have some sort of musical connection with, to just really try to create with people, to let people into your kind of more guarded places that you're working with, even though sometimes that's a hard thing to do in today's culture.
It's very interesting because from my side of the tracks, many of the people, especially in my first interview, which I don't know how long ago that was now, but I was expecting actually to hear a lot of bitter stories, but there were people who spent a lot of money at school and they met so many people at school itself, and they had the similar experiences to yours. Not I'm not talking about the, you know, being taken very far off of the, you know, your trajectory that you wanted to be on, but in terms of meeting people and playing with them and having big careers because of the people that they met in school. I think that has to do with standards too. I think the quality of student that was there and the kind of drive that those particular students had meant that they were on a trajectory. As I had one of my students who became a good friend. The first thing he did after music school was him and his girlfriend, now wife, but him and his girlfriend went straight to Los Angeles and did a lot of couch surfing and, you know, worked his way up, and now is, you know, one of the A-team session players. That is you want to talk about the upper crust percentage, you know.
Some people, so, you know, I'm definitely not trying to make the point that nobody has a good experience. That would be.
It's just few.
It's few. It's few, and yeah, I mean, it's just if you are kind of you know, spinning the wheel with your own money. Or worse,
the roulette wheel.
The roulette wheel. Yeah, it's like.
Or is it the wheel? Or is it the wheel that the lady would go on, where somebody would throw the knives? That's more like that wheel.
Especially like the world got so, like the world of music, you know, just gigs got so much worse since I started. Like, you know, It was already bad, but you know, and like we were still in a pre-streaming world, so you know, I mean. I remember talking to Kreisberg, and he was saying that like the golden era for him, where he was making the most money, was in between CDs and streaming. Like when he was like when everybody opened their own label, and you were just selling downloads on like Apple, on iTunes, because you know Apple took a huge cut, but he got the rest of the money. You know, so even in jazz, people were making serious money for a minute. We just missed that boat. When I went to school, there was Julian Lodge, Brian Baker, and Esperanza Spalding. Like they were in my class. Or Julian was like 2 years younger than me. They had a blast. They had the greatest time. It was just, you know, playing in like, you know, the all-star bands, having their posters on the walls. Like those kind of people have a great time in school. There's also kind of an echelon right below the school superstars of just the people who play with them, the drummers that are in those ensembles. And yeah, those guys get to network because they're there with them, right?
Yeah.
And those guys are playing with like whoever, like, you know, Joe Lovano and Gary Burton and all these guys. And yeah, there's kind of like there's a very small like upward mobility, like pecking order hierarchy of like, you know, of course, yeah, there's the superstars who are in the bands with like the young lions and the older bands, and then there's the people who end up being their rhythm sections. And there's like the two, you know, there's the whatever John Mayer, like, you know, that goes to the school, ends up like in every class there's somebody who ends up having a great career, and then there's the keyboardist and the drummer that were their roommates, right? It's like, of course that happens, but again, that happens the least. You know what I mean? Like if we do like a documentary about like the fucking people living under a bridge in San Francisco right now, I'm sure there's more of them just like sucking dick and doing some fentanyl tonight. So it's like, you know, I mean, like, well, like, why don't we talk about those?
Nice
people?
picture. Thanks for that image.
You're welcome. You know, so it's but I'm saying that's a thing too right now. So and there's more of there's more of the latter.
I think that yeah.
Thanks for bringing that image to my channel.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You did mention something in the beginning, and it's something that I've heard some of my colleagues, classmates and colleagues bring up, and that is that to a certain degree, the professors, and now this is their complaint, not mine. I'm just the conduit. That to a certain degree, that the professors and the administration bear responsibility, because they know this. They know that a lot of these people are going to leave school with a massive debt, and they're not going to be gigging anywhere. They probably won't. They probably actually won't do music. Now, there is, I want to say that you could say that's criminal, and you can also say, hey, that's just what they did for their undergrad. They decided to go to law school, or they decided to go to engineering school, or what have you. And that was just part of their journey. And that's a beautiful thing. They did music. So now they can teach their kids about music. I mean, there's that.
That's an interesting point. I mean, first of all, like, if somebody came here tomorrow and offered me to be a Berklee professor, which at this point is not likely, but like let's say it happened and they offered me a certain amount of money, would I walk back all the things I say about how evil it is and take the money? I haven't been tested in that way. There are. I'm not judging people's personal situation. Like, you know what I mean? Some people have sick family members. They need the insurance. There's all sorts of like real life considerations where people do way worse things for money. But we're talking about whether like it's ethical or not. It's a discussion that is not so much. It's not relevant, I would say, to whether it's right or wrong, the personal story of, the perpetrator. So it's, morally, it's very easy, ethically and morally, it's very easy to point at it and say that it is 100% wrong and it's participating, at least to some extent, in evil. In robbing people of their freedom, people who are susceptible to marketing, especially when you make them dream, especially people who come from not a lot, who have big dreams and are not, some of them are not well, I would say, it's not they're not well educated, but they're very naive.
I've seen this, by the way. I've seen this firsthand because after I worked 17 years, I was at Frost School of Music for 20 years. Then I went and worked for the Art Institute. And, here in Miami, it was called Miami International University, but it was still part of Art Institute. It was a pay-for-profit school. And these recruiters viciously went after people who had returned from war, lots of ex-military people, and sold them the dream of being a producer, a musician, and they got, neck deep in debt. And actually they used the GI Bill, but if a lot of times they failed out, so they ruined their use of the GI Bill, because I think there's only so many failures that you can get before they say, hey, look, it's over with. But not only the veterans, there were also a lot of people who had no business being there and then would end up with a huge debt. I mean, it wasn't a Berklee number, but you would have somebody that came from very, very humble means with a $98,000 debt. That they're never going to pay that back.
I would say, if I'm being very honest, I teach close to 40 students a week now privately. I have yet to send somebody where my impression was like, you should go to music school for any reason. Like, it never crossed my mind, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud. Like, I've never gotten with a student to a certain place where I'm like, you know what would be great for you? Music school. The thought never entered my mind once. And I don't know. It's like, it feels to me like, let's say you have the resources that music school, like you just have a blank check in your hand for $250,000 to spend on growth. like, I don't know, who do you like? Do you like Frank Mbali? You can buy Frank Mbali for like a year probably. You can have him live in your house. He can be your Roomba. You know, it's like who do you want? You know what I mean? It's like it's just like you can be with your heroes for a fraction of that money. I mean, how much does Scott Henderson charge for a lesson? $200? Like, it's yeah. I don't know either. I'm assuming, like, what is it? It's not $1,000, right? Nobody would pay that. So,
Right.
Right.
I mean, like, what you spend at Berklee for an hour, is probably what you would like pay these people for a day.
But you know what? Interestingly enough, when I was interviewing Rick Beato, I think for that all before Rick Beato became, the famous guy, he's on that Should You Go to Music School video. And he brings up an important point. It's not just about the music stuff that he learned. He was saying it wasn't just the networking. It was the personal growth that occurs during those formative years. That being in music school, was really a big part of that sort of formation.
Oh, but it's you can't compare to it's a counterfactual argument. You don't have a parallel reality where you didn't go to school and practice to compare it to. So that was my original point. You can't take a serious practicer, studier, musician person, take the years 18 to 22, which is the formative years in every player's life, where you go from being a boy to being a man.
Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically. But like, musically, a lot of change happens in those years, and attribute it all to music school. Like, especially if you find the curriculum distracting. And, also, like, there was a real problem. Like, I'll tell you, my first day at music school, my first day at Berklee started with a guitar lesson. I remember it was like 9 a.m. In the 1122 Boylston building, and I just remember showing up there. The teacher's name was Mark. I told them I wanted to study fusion. I was like, I want to learn fusion. And the shit I was listening to then was like, do you remember those MVP records? Centrifugal Funk, like Sean Lane and Brett Garsett and Frank Mbali. That's the shit I was into. I love that shit. When I was like 17, that was like my wet dream of guitar. And I just remember this guy, Mark White. I didn't know who he was. I just assumed all the teachers at Berklee were amazing. And we sit down, and he told me, like, play me a C major scale. And I don't go like, and he's like, no, play it legato. So I'm like playing it like hammer-ons and pull-offs, I'm like a shredder kid. And he's just like, no, the Italian legato. Smooth. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on?
I'm going to use that line.
What? That's just like, it's like smooth, connected, even. And I'm just like, I was just like, okay. So I like do it. And then he's like, check this out. And he puts on like this funk backing track, and he plays for me. And I just remember, like, at almost 18, I was still 17 because I have like an October birthday. It was September, like before I turned 18. I just remember listening to him play and thinking, like, what the fuck is going on here? I ended up being with some guys who were very good at guitar. Like, I studied with Tim Miller when I was in school. He's great. I studied with Dave Tronzo, who I liked a lot for reasons. I studied with Mick Goodrick, which was not a great experience, but it's kind of like a Berklee thing. You just get it. It was but I don't know. But for the most part, I always had ears. Like, I always could tell the difference between the guys on the albums that I liked and just the fucking guys, who were just like, I don't know, like, it's weird, and in my band, like, really early on, we got good opportunities. I don't know if I told you, we were like Holdsworth's opening band for 30 shows. He was in our van, so we got to spend like a month in 2012 with like him, Virgil Donati, and Jimmy Haslip. And we were Scott Henderson's opening band for a couple of tours. We were all in the same, had the same management. And, that experience was like kind of the opposite, where it was, I'd see these players who, like, there were no, for me, that was life-changing in the sense that there was no next level. I feel like maybe saxophone players, like maybe they get to meet Michael Brecker, but like they always loved like some guy like Charlie Parker who died a long time ago. So they never get to see that person, to like, or to feel the energy of the thing that they put forward. You know what I mean? Like to just absorb the life force behind the notes. And man, like, Allan was like kind of like close to like the end of his life, but Allan was a fucking beast. He was just so just like the not just the stuff like we all know about, like the notes and the scales and like this legato and stuff, but just like on that level of putting the music into the person in front of you. You know what I mean? Some people play and it's like stuff, it's like it doesn't go in, and he just had a way of like, when it was on, like, when he was like sober enough to do it well, it's just like, just like kind of went into you. And that was the thing that, like, with my experience with most of the professor, even the good players, even the best players at Berklee, like, that's the one thing they never had. You know why? Because they were professors, because they spent their lives professing. They weren't playing gigs. They weren't training the muscle of shooting music into people, which players have. And that's the thing. Like, you look at a guy like Metheny, say what you will about him. Dude played like 10,000 gigs, It's just like that 10,000 Mozart hours, he did like those, and then another 10,000 on stage. And you work on putting the music into people. And that, for every child being sold the jazz or a fusion dream, I don't care who you are, that's what you want. That's what's there on the Charlie Parker album. That's what's there on the Coltrane album. And there's a lot of surrounding information because the music is complex. So there's a harmony bit to it. There's a rhythm bit to it. And those things could be talked about. But the other stuff needs to be experienced. And I don't think that a lot of college professors are qualified to transfer it because they can't really do it. And to an extent, they know they can't.
So I guess you're not recommending anybody to music school to go to music school. Is that what you just said, basically?
I mean, I would say go study with a player. Like, you love Kreisberg.
Yep.
He fucking teaches lessons.
Yeah.
It's like, and he sells courses. Go study with Kreisberg. Who do you like that's
That's one of the benefits of
they need money
today.
That's one of the benefits of today. Now everybody is reachable. Back in the day, these were just names that you saw on a record.
100%.
And they were untouchable.
But like, I would ask you, like, you have like kind of good things and bad things to say about school. Mm-hmm. If you are, let's say you are obsessed with a player, why would you go study generally about the style of the player somewhere else rather than talk to this guy once a week and ask him what to do?
For me, I knew when I was in music school that I wanted to do something that was going to give me some longevity. And I thought being a world-class teacher was the way to do it. I was the only person who in my circle who even, approached thinking like that. I was a studio music and jazz performance major. And then I got my master's in jazz pedagogy, but I did more playing as a jazz pedagogy major than I did. Right. Yeah, at least that's what it felt like. Because I was working for my tuition. I was a TA. So I was doing a lot. Yeah, so like I was saying, I wanted to be a world-class educator, but I also wanted to be an amazing player. And so I was very torn between those two things. But I'd already known that becoming a good I already knew that you had to play really, really well to be a great professor. And that was the culture at University of Miami. All the professors played really well. The jazz guys knew thousands of tunes and had played with all these people. So that was the bar. The bar was set very high. So at the time I wanted to be like, jack of all trades and be able to play, good country style guitar and, be able to be a proficient jazz player and be able to play rock stuff and blah, 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 that whole thing. And that's useless now, Like,
why is that useless?
Maybe it isn't, but I don't know. Why is that useless? I mean, it seems like even back then there were the specialists, and they would call the specialists to do those kind of things. And if you could kind of fake your way, you were good enough. I don't know. Maybe that wasn't useless because I feel like it gave me a lot of insight. It definitely wasn't the curriculum at school.
Yeah, no,
I had to do a lot of pushing. And by pushing I mean pushing myself basically to find the recordings, and at that time the VHS tutorials to do something like Brent Mason, or to try and shred like whomever the shred guy was at the time. Now it seems like it's just, now you don't even have to really work too hard.
No, yeah, I mean,
like it's all there for you.
There was,
it's all there.
Yeah, like that time, like the Don Mock videos and like then the REH and Starlick stuff came out, was very exciting. It's
super exciting. It was every month.
Yeah,
every month there was new people.
It really felt like there was just this real balance between greatly done instructional, like really like pre-YouTube type instructional, and a scarcity that made you really pay attention. So it was just like the right balance. I mean, I still think to this day there has never been an instructional video quite as deep and good as like the Scott Henderson second video.
Oh, yeah.
Not the Screech when he looks like Screech, the one where he's like more like a Jew lion, like with like a little fro. It's really cool. It's just that's the highest, like I think it's called melodic phrasing or something.
Yeah,
or melodic control.
I mean, that was great also because Scott is a very giving person in terms of his whole thing. Like he wasn't from this old guard where it's like you would keep secrets.
Yeah.
Back then, a lot of guys were still from that old, like Holdsworth was from that generation. I knew a lot of people from that generation in that part of the world where secrets were like this. You would keep the secrets close to your vest because they were so hard fought.
Yeah.
To get. And back then it was cool if you actually kept the secrets to yourself, where it's now that if you do that, you're a dick.
Yeah.
Now you're actually seen as great as if you could go like this.
Yeah.
This is something that one of the most famous Irish fiddlers in the world, who I spent a long time with, James Kelly. He would always talk about doing this with the information, not this. Like this was the wrong direction. Keeping it. I'm not going to show you this trick. I'm not going to show you this scale. Even Schofield in one of his videos, he says something like, "I'm not going to show you the harmonic vehicles that I use in that 2-volume video." He says it to that guy Askell Book, I think is the guy's name.
Uh-huh.
He says, "You know what these sound like. I'm not going to tell you how I'm doing it." Or something like that. And I was like...
Yeah.
Why did I buy this, John?
Yeah, absolutely. For you to tell me what Phrygian is.
Because he was the only guy that was doing that at the time. Why should he give those secrets away? And if you could hear it, good for you. Then you can figure it out.
I've met too many guitar players to still think that the limiting factor is information. It's always talent and dedication. You know what I mean?
I mean, let's face it. You want to figure out anything that John's done or anything that even Allan has done.
You said
listen,
yeah.
Slow this shit down, figure it out. If it's too stretchy or too technically advanced for you, ask somebody. Get a mentor. And if he doesn't know, I mean, if you can't figure it out nowadays, there's so many tools.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you know, and just, you know, to your point of like jack of all trades and stuff, I think if it's coming from a pure place of being genuinely curious about the music you love, then it's never a waste of time, you know, because it's the way that we learn about ourselves is through other people's work. It's somehow like, I even doubt that your favorite Allan Holdsworth moments are the things that he liked about his own playing, or that anybody else really likes about his playing. You know, like the things we tend to zone in on, like all we do is a sort of collage of our own aesthetic, like built with like pieces of other people's work. You know, like that Scott lick, that Schofield lick, that Holdsworth chord, that Brent Mason idea, the double stops here, the technique from that. It's just, we're sort of seeing bits of the things we love manifested in people who have it together, and we study those pieces. Like after we kind of put them all on a fabric, we're just like, oh, that's me, you know. Things have changed a lot from the time you went and the time I went, and things probably changed even more. Like, I don't know what's going on there now, but from the trajectory, I would assume that it's gotten a lot worse on a lot of levels. You know what I mean? I think I can't imagine that the hiring practices, let's just put it that way, were moved in the direction of meritocracy. Since I was there.
Also, it's not only the hiring. If you think about what's happened when I was in school, the great guys that were coming into school as freshmen had already been through the public school system, and the public school system was really fucking robust.
Yeah.
As far as music. And now it's non-existent in many, many, many cities.
I mean, that's one factor. Absolutely true. I think another one was just the amount of live music opportunities in like restaurants and bars was literally like every place had music. Even in Chicago, the amount of places that like had music when I moved here compared to the amount of places that have music now, it's like.
Oh, I was referring to the reason why the student body was so good.
I know, and I'm saying the same thing. Like the students, even like in high school, had gigs because there were so many places to play.
Oh, got it.
Like the gig market was just more. There were more gigs, and young people could play gigs, so you'd get like experience out in the world. That was another factor, and I mean, it's even rehearsal. I mean, man, like in the 80s and 90s in the States, it was easy to find a place to get together with people and play that you could make sound in, and you could pay like pennies on the dollar to be there. Mm-hmm. Like now, go try to find a place that's not an actual designated rehearsal space that you're paying like, I don't know, $30 an hour for the room with amps and drums to play. It's like, you know, unless you're going to somebody's garage, it's like paying rent. So,
that could be an argument to go to music school.
Yeah, I mean that would actually be the only good one I've heard so far.
where you have a, even if it's a fake environment.
Yeah, an environment.
You have a pool of players. You've got a bunch of places to play in, and you know, you can have sort of the experience.
I mean, that would be a great argument if it was like free, but like you are paying for it. So it's like that's the only thing to remember. It's like people won't do it. But like just imagine for a second that you take what you pay Berklee for a week and you say, "Okay, I'm going to rent the nicest studio in my city for a day. And then I'm going to bring all the greatest players in my city who are not famous You can do, like, there basically nobody will say no to $200, like, in any city. You know what I mean? Like, you can get the greatest bassist in your city, the greatest drummer in your city, $200 each to play for hours, to play standards for hours. And then you can get a film crew to film it, to make content. You will actually be, like, doing something that might have value in the world. And it will cost you a fraction of what a week at school would cost you. Right? You could produce mega content with the best, like, you just have to get over the humiliation of, like, oh, I had to pay them to play with me. It's like, you had to pay these administrators. You know, you paid the fat lady that's, like, in HR that you've never even seen. You're paying people all day, every day.
Yeah, that's true. But just think, if you're in music school, you could just work on your ictus, gets much better.
Yeah, exactly. There's that.
Imagine, there's that. I mean, look at this flow.
I mean, it's pretty, that actually it looks like somebody who's not doing it for the first time. So, props. Yeah. You paid attention.
Yeah, that was a rough class. But you know what? I think that we have. I mean, we've definitely plumbed the depths of this, but I don't know if we've come up with an answer other than don't go to music school.
I think that is the answer. I don't think that we should come up with another one and that's it. Why would you have another one? You know what I mean? It's there are questions that just have an answer. I mean, I don't know. You know what music school really taught me?
What?
To be terrified of going to the doctor. Because the idea that there are people graduating med school at the level of some of my friends that graduated music school and performing surgeries is so frightening. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know people who can't fucking, who have a degree, who just, like, have never even been in the zip code of an altered scale. They just don't know what it is. They don't know how, like, they've heard about it a lot of times, and they don't know how to, like, use it in time. Maybe they can ride it. And, like, could you imagine if that's, like, some doctor's understanding of, like, a vein? It's just like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah, I get it. Oh, I know altered. It's like, yeah, sure. It's like, I just, yeah, it's that thing. It's melodic minor, right? And it's just like, Jesus Christ, stay away from me. So
I'm supposed to cut here, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe here.
So the fact that, and those are most of the people I know in music. Most of the people I know, their understanding of the workings of, let's say, jazz harmony is mediocre at best. And the thought that that's the level of doctors is a frightening prospect.
Well, let's leave it at this. Since you do not recommend music school, specifically, what do you recommend?
I recommend that people spend a long time thinking about what it is that they want to be, that they want to become, and use the things and people they actually listen to and love as orientation points, like the same way that, let's say, you navigate using the stars, like something very, like Frank Sinatra is like something very beautiful, very great, and very far away. And those should be like the basic coordinates, like if you love Coltrane or you love Holdsworth. So that's just kind of hanging there. And then you should keep your ears open and judge the people that you interact with seriously about direction to those coordinates based on people who you respect, not as people but as musicians, that your ears respect the sounds that they make, that they are navigating this maze of sound and music and harmony in a way that moves you and is connected in some way to your goals. And you should only talk to these people seriously about where it is that you're trying to go.
because think about getting better at music like going from Chicago to Florida, but on foot. You certainly would like to talk to somebody who walked there before, not somebody who walked in the other direction, generally about walking, or somebody who, swims, because they might have advice, but it's not pertinent to the journey you're about to take to the same level that somebody who's done it. They'll tell you, they won't be able to repeat your journey. It's happening at a different time. It's happening different climate. The circumstances are different, but they will be able to have useful pointers of things that happen along the way. Nice places to stop, right? Things you should concentrate on, what you should bring with you. There is relevant information when you are taking a very long journey. And I think that you don't need experts at every stage of the way that are like world experts, but you need people with experience that have successfully completed some sort of journey of their own in a way that manifests actual results that you are the perceiver of, right? It's about, you should spend 0 time studying with people that sound bad in your assessment. And you should always trust your ears, because that's the only thing you have to go off of.
That is fantastic.
Oh,
I really enjoyed this, and
same.
Yeah, this was really good.
Okay.
We need to have you on again.
Yeah, we'll do it again. All righty. Talk to you soon,
So,
man.
all the best to you. Take care.
Have a great night.